There are moments in life that arrive without warning, quiet, trembling moments that slip into the room like a soft wind brushing against the soul. And sometimes those moments carry a message you never expected to hear. I remember the night it began, the night when sleep felt heavier than usual, when silence wrapped itself around me like a veil. You know that feeling, don't you? When the world grows still, when even your own heartbeat sounds louder than the darkness around you. That night, I felt something stirring in the air, something ancient, something watching, and I didn't understand why until the dream took me. The first thing I felt was the cold, not the kind that chills your skin, the kind that settles deeper, like a whisper pressed against the bones. I could hear something distant like a storm rolling over the horizon, low and rumbling, growing closer. Pause for a moment and imagine that a sound so deep it vibrates through the ground beneath your feet, a warning carried on a trembling wind. I found myself standing in an open field, the sky torn open by streaks of trembling red as if the heavens themselves were bleeding. And in the midst of that trembling light, I felt a presence. You ever feel something before you see it? Something so powerful your breath falters without knowing why? That's how it was. Then he appeared. Jesus didn't walk toward me. He didn't descend. He was simply there standing in front of me as though time had parted like a curtain to let him through. The air around him shimmered, warm against the cold that surrounded everything else. His eyes held a sadness too deep for words, as though he carried the weight of centuries within a single glance. And before he spoke, before even a whisper left his lips, I felt my spirit bending beneath the gravity of his presence. "Why have you come?" I wanted to ask. "What is happening?" But the words stayed locked inside me, trembling on the edge of silence. He looked at me and then beyond me, as if he were staring into the heart of the world itself. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, yet threaded with a sorrow that pierced right through the dream, right through me. "There is a darkness coming," he said. "A darkness, not a metaphor, not a symbol. No, this was something real, something alive, something approaching." And as he spoke, the red sky behind him began to flicker, dimming into shades of deep violet and black, as though his words themselves drained the light from the heavens. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever heard something in a dream that didn't feel like imagination? Something that clings to you long after waking? Something that feels sent? That's how it felt. His words didn't echo in the air, they echoed inside me. "A darkness is coming in the year 2026, he said, his voice carrying a tremor of urgency. "Many will not see it until it is already upon them." When I heard that year, the ground beneath me cracked like thin ice, splitting outward in jagged lines. And with every fracture, shadows seeped out crawling, twisting, spreading like ink across paper. I wanted to step back to escape the dread building inside me, but my feet refused to move. The darkness kept spreading, swallowing the horizon one trembling inch at a time. And yet, Jesus didn't move from his place. He stood in the midst of that rising night as though the shadows feared touching him. He lifted his hand toward me, and for the first time, I felt warmth rush through me, soft and steady. "Do not fear," he said, "but do not ignore this." His eyes locked onto mine, and in that gaze, I felt as though he were searching my soul, weighing every choice I'd ever made, every doubt I'd ever carried, every moment I turned away from the things I knew I should have faced. You felt that too, haven't you? That moment when you realize something is coming, something that demands your attention, your strength, your courage, something you can't run from. I could feel it in that dream as clearly as I can feel the air in my lungs right now. And then the wind began to howl, a sharp, haunting cry that carried with it the scent of burning earth and falling rain. It wrapped around me like a warning, a reminder that this was not some harmless vision. This was a message meant for anyone with ears to hear. Jesus turned his gaze to the sky. "The world is changing," he said softly, "and many will be tested." His voice trembled not with fear, but with grief. And then he asked a question that felt like it was meant not just for me, but for you too. Will they be ready? The moment he said those words, the sky split open with a roar, not of thunder, but of something deeper, like the groan of creation itself giving way. Shadows poured down like rain, swirling, twisting, forming shapes that felt almost human, but empty, hollow. And still, he did not step back. You ever stand in a dream where everything feels too real, where the air, the sounds, the light, all of it feels sharper than reality itself? That's how this felt. The wind, the trembling ground, the shadows, every piece of it etched itself into my memory. And there was something inside me whispering, stay awake, pay attention, something is coming. And Jesus, watching the spreading darkness with a sorrowful calm, spoke again. This is only the beginning. Those words held more weight than anything I'd ever heard. The beginning of what? The beginning of chaos? The beginning of judgment? The beginning of change? My mind swirled with questions, but the dream wouldn't let me speak. I could only watch as the darkness continued to crawl across the horizon, swallowing stars, dimming the sky, suffocating the light. And yet somehow the moment felt unfinished, as though what he truly wanted to reveal was coming next. And that's where the dream held me suspended between fear and understanding, between warning and revelation, between what I saw and what I still needed to hear. When the dream shifted, it was so subtle I almost didn't notice. The ground beneath me stopped trembling, the wind softened, and the sky dimmed into a strange, muted twilight, neither night nor day, suspended in something in between. And that silence, that uneasy stillness, felt heavier than the chaos that came before it. You know how sometimes the quiet feels more dangerous than the storm? How the moments when everything goes still make your heart beat louder? That's what it felt like. Jesus stood beside me now instead of in front of me, as though he wanted me to see what he saw, what was approaching from beyond the dim horizon. And what I saw wasn't just darkness anymore. It was movement, slow, deliberate, like something waking up after centuries of sleep. Look, he said softly, but his voice carried the weight of a command. So I looked. The horizon quivered like a thin veil of smoke, bending and twisting as shapes emerged, shadows with no faces, drifting like remnants of forgotten souls. And as they drew closer, I felt a pressure on my chest, a weight that made it hard to breathe. These are the forgotten, Jesus whispered, his voice filled with sorrow, the ones who chose blindness. Have you ever wondered how many people walk through life without truly seeing? Not physically blind, but spiritually asleep? People who ignore the warnings, the signs, the whispers that try to wake them? As I watched those shadows drift across the sky, I felt a chill crawl up my spine because I knew this dream wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who has ever felt lost in the noise of the world, anyone who senses something shifting deeper than the surface. Then the ground cracked again, but this time it didn't split, it opened. A thin, glowing line of light spread across the earth like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, slow, steady, alive. And the light rising from that crack illuminated something I hadn't noticed before. People, faces, crowds stretching as far as the eye could see, men, women, children standing in silence, staring upward as though they were waiting for something or someone. Jesus looked at them with eyes full of heartbreak, and for a long moment, he didn't speak. He just watched them as though he knew every story behind every face, every pain, every fear, every moment they had fallen and stood back up again. They don't know what's coming, he finally said. His voice trembled not from weakness, but compassion, but the darkness does. His words wrapped around me like a tightening rope, and I felt that cold breath of fear whisper across my skin again. Why me? I wanted to ask, why show this to me? But before the thought even finished forming, Jesus turned his gaze toward mine. Because you will remember, he said, and because others will listen. You ever feel a responsibility so heavy it settles onto your shoulders before you can even accept it? That sudden realization that something bigger than you is now depending on you? That's what hit me hard. And Jesus continued. In 2026, the world will face a darkness that does not come from the earth, but from the hearts of those who have forgotten the light. And as he spoke, the shadows in the distance swelled, bleeding outward like ink dropped in water. Think about this, he said, his voice soft but piercing. How many people live their lives chasing noise but avoiding truth? I swallowed hard because I knew what he meant. Everyone feels it, this constant trembling beneath the world, like something is shifting, breaking, awakening. And the more the world tries to distract itself, the louder that trembling becomes. Have you ever felt something changing inside you? He asked gently. A stirring you can't explain? As his words echoed through the twilight, the crowd of silent people began to fade into mist, dissolving one by one as though they were memories being erased. I watched them vanish, and my heart ached. Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. Warm, solid, real, many will disappear into the darkness, he whispered, not because they were taken, but because they surrendered. His words hit me like cold water. Surrendered to what? Fear, temptation, lies. The shadows drew nearer, their forms sharpening into tall, hollow silhouettes like stretched out versions of people stripped of everything that made them human. These, he said, gesturing to the twisted figures, are what fear becomes when left unchallenged. I felt my breath shudder, fear becoming form, darkness becoming alive. And then the dream shifted again. The sky cracked open, not with darkness this time, but blinding light. A single streak shot downward, splitting the twilight like a sword. The shadows recoiled instantly, shrinking away from the brilliance. And in that radiant beam, I heard something, a chorus of voices, faint but clear, singing like distant echoes of hope. Jesus lifted his face toward that light, and for the first time, I saw something other than sorrow in his eyes. I saw strength, resolve. The world will not be left without light, he said, but many must choose it for themselves. And when he turned back to me, his expression grew serious, as though the next words he spoke were meant to carve themselves into my soul. There will be a moment, he said, when the darkness will feel overwhelming, when many will believe there is no way forward. But you must remember this dream, remember what you saw, and help others remember too. My heart pounded, the wind swirled, the shadows froze, the light pulsed, and suddenly I felt something rising inside me, hope mixed with fear, courage tangled with uncertainty. Pause and imagine this. His voice echoed gently. A world where every soul must make a choice and every choice matters. Then he looked into the distance at something I couldn't yet see. The most important part, he whispered, is still ahead. And with those words, the light dimmed, the sky darkened, and everything began to dissolve once more, pulling me deeper into the heart of the vision, deeper into the warning, deeper into the thing he had not yet revealed. When the world around me settled again, it was darker than before, darker in a way that didn't belong to dreams or shadows or night. This darkness felt alive, heavy, watching. It wrapped itself around everything like a veil soaked in sorrow. And yet, somehow, I could still see Jesus standing a few steps ahead of me, his form outlined by a faint glow that held the darkness back, almost as if the light inside him refused to surrender. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty, no, it was full of the weight of what he was preparing to reveal. You ever feel that moment before someone tells you something life-changing? How the air thickens, how your heart slows, how everything in you knows that whatever comes next will divide your life into a before and an after? That's what this moment felt like. Finally, Jesus lifted his hand, and the darkness before us peeled open like curtains pulled aside by an invisible force. Behind it, I saw a city familiar but somehow twisted. Street lights flickering, windows glowing with cold blue light, people walking, but not really moving with purpose, almost like sleepwalkers. Their faces were blank, drained, as though their souls were somewhere else entirely. And hovering above them, drifting like a silent storm cloud, was that same living darkness from before, thicker now, choking the sky. This, Jesus said softly, is what happens when a world forgets to listen. His voice echoed with sorrow, but also with a warning so sharp it felt like it cut through the air. Think about this, he whispered. How many people spend their days consumed by noise, by screens, by the illusions that promise connection, but steal the very thing that makes them human? As I watched the people move like hollow echoes of themselves, I understood this was no ordinary darkness. This was distraction turned into a prison, fear turned into habit, emptiness turned into routine. You know that feeling when you sense something is wrong, even when everything looks normal on the surface? When you scroll or watch or listen, but somewhere deep inside, your soul feels hungry? That's what I felt watching those people. A hunger in them so deep it hollowed them out. Jesus looked at me, and the sadness in his eyes was deeper than before. In 2026, he said, this emptiness will grow. It will spread through hearts that have forgotten how to feel, forgotten how to seek, forgotten how to see what truly matters. He stepped closer to the city, and I followed. As we approached, the darkness above us rippled with a low, humming vibration like an engine running in the shadows. Suddenly, small threads of the darkness descended, slipping into people's chests like smoke. They didn't notice, they didn't resist, they just kept walking. Why don't they fight it? I whispered. Jesus placed a hand over his heart because they believe this feeling is normal. His words echoed through me, rattling in places I didn't know existed. Pause and imagine, he said, millions living in a world where losing yourself feels natural and finding truth feels strange. The idea sent a chill through me because even in the dream, even listening to his voice, I recognized pieces of that world, pieces I've seen in faces around me, maybe even pieces I felt myself. Jesus moved further into the city, and as we walked, I began to see cracks forming in the streets, thin, glowing, trembling lines of light, the same heartbeat glow I had seen earlier. They pulsed softly, like reminders, like whispers. These are the remnants of truth, he said. The light people still carry, even when they think they have lost it. He paused as the cracks dimmed under the spreading darkness. But in 2026, the darkness will try to seal them. My chest tightened, a sinking feeling settled into me like a stone. Can it? I asked. Jesus lifted his gaze to the cloud of living shadows above us. Only if people surrender their hearts. Then something changed. From the corner of the city, a young man broke from the silent crowd. He ran not in fear, but in desperation, as though he had suddenly remembered something important enough to rip him from the grip of the darkness. He looked up at the sky, trembling. His hands shook. His breath came in rapid bursts, and for the first time, one of the cracks in the ground blazed bright beneath his feet. Jesus watched him closely. Some will awaken, he whispered. They will feel the shift before anyone else. They will sense the weight of what approaches. I stepped closer, watching the man drop to his knees, light spilling from beneath him like a wounded sun. And then suddenly, a tendril of darkness lashed downward, fast, violent, targeting him. I gasped, but before the darkness could reach him, Jesus raised his hand. And the darkness recoiled not in fear, but in recognition, like it knew the authority before it. This is the battle, Jesus said, lowering his hand once more. And it is not fought in the sky, nor in the earth, but in the soul of every person who breathes. The air trembled around us, and I felt something shifting, pulling, rising inside me, a truth I hadn't yet heard, but could feel approaching like footsteps in the dark. Jesus turned to me, his expression grave. What I am about to show you, he said, is the part most people will refuse to believe. His voice dropped lower, heavier, but you must see it because the final warning depends on it. And just as he spoke those words, the city around us began to fade, dissolving into smoke. The ground vanished beneath my feet. The sky swallowed itself, and I felt the dream shift once more, pulling me toward the heart of the revelation he had promised, the truth hidden behind the coming darkness, the thing he said would shake the world in 2026. When the dream opened again, everything was gone. The city, the crowds, even the echo of light that once traced the cracks in the earth. I found myself standing in a vast, endless plain where the sky stretched out like a canvas of deep indigo. No stars, no moon, just an infinite, breathless darkness that felt older than time itself. But unlike the earlier shadows, this darkness wasn't chaotic. It was waiting, silent, observing, like a presence that had been patient for centuries and was now preparing to step forward. Jesus stood at my side again, but this time, even his glow seemed gentler, softer, like he was preparing me for something I would not be able to forget. "This is where the truth lives," he said quietly, "and where the final warning must be spoken." His voice moved through the air like wind over water, calming yet unshakably powerful. I felt the weight of his words settle deep in my chest. You ever stand on the edge of something and feel your soul lean forward, even when your body wants to step back? That was me in this moment, caught between fear and understanding, caught between what I wanted to know and what I was meant to know. Then, from the far distance, a dull rumble rolled across the plain, subtle at first, then growing louder like thunder approaching from a horizon I couldn't see. Jesus looked toward it with an expression I had never seen on him before. Not sorrow, not anger, but a profound, aching disappointment. "The darkness that comes in 2026, he said slowly, is not an event, but a choice." The word struck me harder than any image in the dream, a choice. He stepped forward, and the ground beneath his feet began to glow, revealing faint outlines, shapes appearing in the dust. When I looked closely, I realized they were footprints. Hundreds, thousands. Footprints leading in all directions. Some deep, some faint, some turning back, some walking straight into the dark. "Every soul," Jesus continued, "will stand on this plane spiritually, if not physically, and each will choose which path their heart follows." The thunder grew louder, closer now, vibrating through the air like the heartbeat of something massive approaching. "Think about this," he said gently. "How many people today walk without knowing where they're going? How many choose out of fear or comfort or pressure instead of truth?" His question lingered in the quiet, sinking into me like a seed in soil, because I knew every one of us has felt that moment, that choice, that crossroads. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly the darkness parted like a curtain, revealing something I never expected to see. A massive wave of shadow was sweeping toward us, towering, rolling, almost alive, its edges flickering like black flame. And within that wave, I saw flashes of faces, human faces, eyes filled with fear, anger, confusion, exhaustion, people who had fallen into despair, people who had drowned in bitterness, people who had surrendered to the lie that hope was too small to fight for. "This," Jesus whispered, "is the darkness born from the hearts of the weary." I felt chills crawl up my spine, deeper than before, not because the darkness was terrifying, though it was, but because I recognized something familiar in those faces. Pain I'd seen in the world, loneliness I'd seen in friends, doubt I'd felt myself. "But watch closely," Jesus said, lifting his other hand. And then something extraordinary happened. The ground began to tremble, and from the earth, small lights began to rise, tiny at first, like sparks from a dying fire. But they grew brighter, stronger, gathering together into clusters. And each cluster took the shape of a person, a soul standing firm, unmoving, facing the wave of darkness. Their light didn't fight the darkness, it simply refused to be swallowed. "These," Jesus said softly, "are the ones who remember." I watched as the wave hit the first of the shining figures, and instead of crushing them, the darkness broke around them like water around stone. Their light didn't flash or flare, it simply remained, constant, unshaken. "This is the revelation," Jesus said, turning to me. "The darkness coming in 2026 is not here to destroy the world, it is here to reveal it." His voice echoed inside me, shaking something loose. "It will reveal who stands in truth and who hides in fear, who clings to light and who follows convenience, who remembers their purpose and who has forgotten." The wave roared past, breaking and reforming, but every soul that carried light remained untouched. And then Jesus stepped closer, his face inches from mine, his eyes filled with something that startled me, hope. "Do you understand?" he asked. "The warning is not about fear. It is about awakening. The plane began to fade, the sky dissolving now into brilliant white light. Because when the darkness comes, he continued, those who carry even the smallest spark will see clearly, and the world will change. Everything around us grew brighter, almost too bright to bear. Jesus' voice grew softer, almost like a whisper carried by wind. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what you felt. Tell them the truth, that the darkness is not the end. The light exploded, swallowing everything, and his final words floated through it like a breath. The end is only for those who stop choosing the light. And just like that, I woke, breathless, trembling, changed. And though I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, the echo of his voice still lives in me, steady as a heartbeat, reminding me of the darkness, the choice, and the light that waits for anyone willing to carry it into 2026 and beyond.